we've done lots of forums, and so we like to set ground rules around how these are going to run and how they're going to function. So I'm going to ask everybody to silence their cell phones and refrain from taking pictures or videos this morning. We are recording the forum, so that will be available online after we cut it and get it onto YouTube, so you will be able to get it there. But please make sure that they are silenced, because that can become a distraction in the forums. We also ask that you refrain from cheers, applause, jeers, whatever may be bubbling inside of you at any given moment until the forum concludes, in order to maximize the 60 minutes. We are right on time. We are at 8:30. That means we have 60 minutes to hear from the candidates. However, we are going to ask you to give a round of applause to the candidates as they come to the podium. So we welcome Ms. Nikki Rivera and Mr. Eric Beezer. Okay, another couple things. So the questions posed are going to cover a wide range of business and community issues of interest and concern to the residents of the 96th district. The forum will begin with introductory remarks from both candidates and then move into moderated questions. Following that, we will invite submitted questions from the audience. We are going to ask that you do those on a written piece of paper. So I'm going to put these back here, and you can grab a card or a pen, or ask your buddy on the end of the row to grab you one, and then we'll submit those, have you submit those so that we can go through those as we get through. We may not get to every question that gets submitted. This is a smaller group, so we might be able to get to all of yours. We've done some of these with 500 people, and that's harder to get to everybody's questions. And the questions will only be accepted if they can be directed to both candidates. So just keep that in mind as you frame a question. So we are going to start with 3-minute opening remarks from each of them, and then for every question, they will each get 2 minutes to answer it. This is a little bit different than a traditional debate in that we're not setting it up where one person's answering and then there's a shortened rebuttal and that type of thing. And so we're just going to give even time to each candidate. We felt that was important for this, as it is an open seat here in the 96. Welcome, Representative Sterla here, and thank you for your service. But with it being an open seat, we really thought it was important to give equal time to both candidates as we go through all of the questions this morning. So everybody good? Okay, great. Then we are going to start with the opening remarks. I will be running a timer on my phone. It will buzz at the 3-minute mark. And then for the questions after that, it'll go at the 2-minute mark. So we will start with you, Ms. Rivera.
Yes, this is on.
All right, and you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to Prima Theater and thanks to Lancaster Chamber for hosting this forum. It's a pleasure to be here as a currently elected official and a candidate for House District 96. I am a twice elected Manheim Township School Board school director. In 2017, I was the highest vote getter of all the candidates, Republican and Democrat, in the election. And I served as board president from 2017 to 21. In 2019, since then, I've been vice president of the Lancaster Lebanon IU 13 board as the Manheim Township representative. That's a board of 22 people who have elected me, of Democrats and Republicans who have elected me as vice president of that board. In 2021, I was re-elected to the Township School Board. And in 23, I started serving as the president again, a role that I currently have. I have seen over the years how my voice at school board meetings and how showing up can help change and affect policy. It started with the Sandy Hook tragic shooting in 2012, and since then I have been attending school board meetings at Manheim Township. I ran in 2015. I was unsuccessful in that run, but I went to the very next board meeting because it wasn't about me winning. It was about making an impact on public education. So I kept going to those board meetings. In 2016, when 2 school board seats were vacated in Manheim Township, I did a public interview for those, and I won one of those seats by a majority Republican board. I had been known at the meetings, my positions had been known, and my voice as a teacher had been respected. So I made it onto that board in 2016, and then I won election in 2017 and 2021. That leads us to where we are now. In House District 96, Representative Mike Sterla became my representative 2 years ago in 2022 due to redistricting. In 23, I contacted him and Representative Izzy Smith-Waddell and asked what their jobs entail because I'm interested in their jobs at some point. Of course not House District 49 because I don't live there. So learning about their position is what I wanted to do. I'm an educator, I'm a lifelong learner, so that was what I intended to do. Serious candidates have websites and domain names and bank accounts, and I was planning to start next Wednesday to fundraise. That's why my bank account was open in 2024, and my website domains were purchased so that no one else could take them from me. That's what opposition does when people run for office. And so I established those things, and I joined Representative Smith-Waddell and Mike Sterla's email newsletters and became a volunteer in their activities, the back-to-school giveaways and paper shredding events. I've learned the job because I'm not going to leave a good job of teaching to go to a job that I don't know is right for me. So
time is up. This just isn't doing the beacon like it's supposed to.
Okay, thank
but
you.
I will leave the sassy there. Okay, I'm turning it over to you. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Eric.
Hey, good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum. When I first started my campaign back in January, all of my friends asked the same question: will you get to debate him? And I would smile and say, of course, because I assumed that LNP and WJL would maintain tradition and host debates. Much to our dismay, the debates were canceled by the local media this year. So you can imagine my excitement when Catherine reached out to me last month about hosting this forum. So this is exciting, and I want to welcome Nikki to our beautiful city. Nikki, welcome to Lancaster. I'm sure you'll find it's an amazing little city. I've called Lancaster home for over 40 years. I grew up across the street on Atkins Avenue. My great-grandparents operated a market on Walnut Street. My nana raised her family on Spencer Ave, and I went to Buchanan, Wheatland, and then graduated from McCaskey in '99. Go Tornadoes. Fast forward to the present day, we opened our business, the Green Bee, over at the train station back in 2018. With the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp was legalized in all 50 states. After a century mired in prohibition, we were excited to have the chance to bring this amazing plant back into the marketplace in PA. I was already familiar with the plant and all its benefits, because as a teenager, I read the book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, which tells the history of hemp and all the uses of the cannabis plant. Fun fact, one of the school districts in the 96 is literally named Hempfield. Like back when we built this country and we were naming towns, they looked around the place and saw so much hemp growing around them that they said, let's call this place Hempfield. So we see there's incredible potential here to make Pennsylvania-grown hemp again. And over the last 6 years, I've watched our farmers really do some amazing things with trying to revive this cash crop that we used to build the country in our formative years. Which brings me to where I am today. First and foremost, I want to talk about the economy. Agriculture is not just part of our identity here in Lancaster, it's the backbone of our state economy. I'm committed to supporting our PA family farms and agriculture businesses. This industry doesn't even require subsidization. All that is required for the government to get out of the way, imagine that, a regenerative, green, localized industry that can stand on its own 2 feet. All that is required is a simple legislative fix, and we will instantly unleash an existing $5+ billion state industry. We do this by localizing medical marijuana and allowing our farmers to participate alongside our local businesses. The economic benefits spring eternal. A $5+ billion industry will quickly grow to $10+ billion in PA when we take the PA hemp industry from worst to first. Now, some people will say that I'm a single issue candidate, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I care about many issues. It just so happens that this particular problem has a simple solution rooted in economic justice and liberty. So it is far-ranging and important. Fixing this will help to lower taxes while growing the economy, which is what we need more of from our state legislators.
Thank you. I'm gonna let this run. It's 5 seconds to see if I got volume back on this or not. Oh, it's very light. We'll figure that piece out. Okay, we're gonna dive into some pre-formulated questions here. And these are gonna be focused both on district, but then also how that plays out at the state level as the state representative here. So this one is specifically focused to balancing a diverse district here in the 96. So in Pennsylvania, each state house member represents about 60,000 residents. Knowing that the 96th district includes both city neighborhoods and county suburbs, how do you plan to balance and prioritize the varying needs of your constituents? And what specific issues do you see as the most pressing for this community? And we'll start with you, Mr. Beezer.
Well, so when you talk to people on the streets, most people's message is the same. They're concerned with paying their bills because housing has become so unaffordable, and they're worried about paying their health care bills every month because some people I talk to pay as much as $1,500. So in order to do things that affect everybody at the state level, we need to make housing affordable and health care affordable. That will help people in Lancaster City, Manheim Township, and East Petersburg all the same. So that's an issue that's pretty universal. Now in Lancaster City, the people there pay the highest property taxes in the district, and I think one thing we could do is make sure everybody's paying their fair share. So that would help to make sure that the kids are fairly funded.
Okay, thank you. And we'll turn it over to you, Ms. Rivera.
Thank you. So your question about how to serve the city and the suburbs is a great one, and it's one where I live in Manheim Township. I'm in between. I'm a stone's throw away from East Petersburg, and I have 3 kids who live in the city, 4 kids who work at Lancaster General Hospital. So I'm familiar with the entire district. When it comes to being able to pay for daily goods, it's a matter of equity, I find, especially in education, and not equality. It's very different to say, here's $2 for everybody versus here's 2% for everybody. That's a different thing, equity versus equality. So the city issues are different from the Manheim Township issues, are different from the East Pete issues. I don't find simple solutions, but I do find that hard work and collaboration with businesses and education, apprenticeships, preparing our workforce and providing housing, attracting workers to this area in the different realms. People want city or people want suburb. Being able to adapt what we are and what we do to those groups coming to Lancaster County is what we need to do. It is not a simple answer. It does take a lot of collaboration, and that's what I'm willing to do at the state level as a representative.
Great, thank you. Okay, we are going to move into state finances and kind of a look at rainy day funds for the Commonwealth. According to the Independent Fiscal Office's 5-year outlook, the Commonwealth will deplete cash reserves in the general fund by 2026, and the rainy day fund will be depleted by 2028. If Pennsylvania continues to operate in a structural deficit, it could require tax increases or a reversal of the planned phase down of the corporate net income tax rate. What is your philosophy on managing the state's finances, and do you think the state should or would need to cut programs to balance the budget? And I'll start with you, Ms. Rivera.
Well, when I read your website and I read your 2024 pro-business agenda to foster a positive business environment, what you mentioned on there was zero-based budgeting. I know that's attractive to a lot of people, so that rainy day funds are there, but not in excess, and they don't deplete. There are definite ranges of percentages that you can have a rainy day fund in. So depleting something entirely, like we wouldn't deplete our savings account entirely as individuals, is a very important thing. At Manheim Township School District and on the IU13 board, we use zero-based budgeting, and it's a way to properly stabilize income and revenue and save it for the future. So depleting anything is, I think, not a great idea. Having a plan to put away and earmark money in differentiating funds for the state is the way to go.
Thank you. And Mr. Beezer.
Yeah, so too many politicians often look at just spending money, where I think a better approach would be to help grow our economy. Pennsylvania is bleeding young people here as they move out of state because the business environment isn't all that friendly. So I think the best approach here in Pennsylvania would be to find an environment that makes young families want to start living here in Pennsylvania and grow their own local businesses so that they can help to grow the tax base rather than always looking just for more ways to spend money. I think there's a couple different places in the state budget where we could afford to cut a little bit of money. Specifically with my issue with marijuana prohibition, we're now spending north of $5.2 billion a year on the state police and the state prison. And I think if we take this one simple action to lower crime in Pennsylvania, it will grow the economy and take the pressure off of law enforcement so that we don't have to spend so much money arresting people.
Okay, thank you. we're going to move a little bit into the idea of workforce talent attraction. In Pennsylvania, our fastest growing age demographic is not working age. They are over 65 and generally over 80, making it a little bit challenging. So Lancaster County's unemployment rate hit a historic low of 2.3% last November, and Pennsylvania's working age population continues to decline year after year. With a tight labor market and outward migration of workers, what do you feel is the state's role in workforce talent attraction and job creation? And I'm starting this with you, Mr. Beezer.
Okay, well, the state needs to focus on the things that we need. It's nice to have everybody generally educated, but it's also nice to have people specialize in roles that fit the needs of the current economy. So oftentimes with the slow pace the legislature moves, we're working in the 1990s mindset and living in a 2020s world. So to better train the young people for the jobs of the future, I think would certainly help out filling the needs in the job market in Pennsylvania better, so that people aren't so quick to look to move out of state and go to work elsewhere.
Okay, and Ms. Rivera.
So to attract people to our workforce, we're having the same problems in business as we are in education. We are short on people. We used to graduate 20,000 teachers a year from Pennsylvania. Now we're graduating 6,000. So we've got shortages all over the place. And what we can do to make things more attractive, of course, is one of the things that seems to work in some other states is to subsidize childcare. When we have people who want to come to Pennsylvania to work, but then can't find a place to live or an affordable place to educate their children, that really has an impact. So working with daycare and pre-kindergarten education with families to bring them to this area is a big attraction. Workforce housing, when you have a job and the only house you can find is an hour away that you can afford, that's not conducive to a lot of people coming to our area. So of course we need to increase the supply of housing and have our affordable housing there for our workforce families. Oftentimes those expenses lead to one parent leaving the workforce, which reduces our workforce. So making those basic needs of a young family attainable will help to bring and retain our employees in the future.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about housing because that's certainly an issue here in Lancaster County and how we manage our housing stock and ensure we have enough. So a 2022 housing analysis conducted by the Economic Development Company of Lancaster County determined that Lancaster is at least 7,000 to 12,000 housing units behind what is considered a healthy vacancy rate. This would be countywide. Housing developers have attempted to build more, but they're often held back by regulatory burdens from DEP and long wait times for permit approval. How would you address permitting reform and DEP oversight to make Pennsylvania's regulatory environment better? And I'm starting with you, Ms.
Okay. So yes, the housing supply is very low. I met with 3 architects not too long ago to talk about the needs of our housing supply and how to go about getting denser housing into the areas that we have here in Lancaster County without invading our preserved farm areas. Certainly when we look at the shortage of housing, we need to have permitting that goes a lot faster than what it was currently going. And under Governor Shapiro, the 30-day process of turning around of a permit application versus and getting the job started has been in progress. So those sorts of things I would continue to support to reduce the red tape and to get those projects going faster, because the longer they sit on the docket waiting, the more expensive they become, and then the less likely the developer is to go on doing those projects. So the incentives for developers, such as the LERTA tax, L-E-R-T-A, which helps to reduce taxes at first, it incentivizes people to buy a property, fix it up, and make it worth a whole lot more in taxes in a specified amount of time. So being able to count on that future income to improve properties in House District 96 is something that I want to work on. We just did this in Manheim Township with the Staley Silk Mill. A developer bought the mill that had been run down, dilapidated, and worth nothing in taxes, and is rebuilding it, and over 10 years will fade in the taxing under LERTA to make it a taxable property in the future. And of course, relying on property taxes to do all of that Lancaster, of course, is looking at the home rule to see how we can diversify taxes. When we rely just on the backs of property owners and business owners, I think there's a better option when we diversify.
Thank you. Mr. Beezer.
Yeah, so this is an issue that's a little bit different between Lancaster City and Manheim Township. In my 25 years of driving the roads in the 96th district, we've almost completely developed all the remaining land in Manheim Township. So in order to bring in more housing, what we're kind of left with is building upward in the city. But programs like LERTA, well, some people will say about the pros of them, I think one of the cons of them is when the only people are corrupt politicians able to utilize them for their personal residences, that really doesn't help the 53% of Lancaster City residents who are renters. So driving down 501, I think it's kind of odd when you see a Manheim Township landlord telling Lancaster City residents to vote yes on home rule so that they can avoid paying property taxes and then shift the burden back onto incomes of local city renters.
Okay, thank you. We're going to focus on transportation for a few minutes. And so the 96th district includes the Lancaster train station. It includes numerous RRTA bus routes and hundreds of miles of roads. But there are questions at a state level of how do we continue to fund transportation and meet the needs and demands of our transportation infrastructure and our transportation systems. So how would you suggest that we fund that? There's things like taxing skill games, there's individual through your registration. What are your thoughts on how we fund our transportation infrastructure? And I'll start with you, Mr. Beezer.
I do think the tax and skill games would be a good option here, but you have to watch out. The state legislature had promised us property tax relief when they legalized gambling in Pennsylvania, and that never really trickled down to the populace. But with so much people not having cars in Lancaster City, it is important to make sure that public transportation is funded so that people are able to get to work. And we're starting to do more development around the train station because a lot of people like living in Lancaster, even if they work elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Rivera.
So transportation is one of the committees I'd like to join as a state rep. That along with public education, basic education committees. The transportation in the city with our RTA does come out our pikes and it goes out the wagon wheel of streets throughout the county. But it doesn't cross over as the farther out it gets, it doesn't cross over into neighborhoods where people would make use of public transportation if it were there. I would like to see an increase in transportation funding, and maybe I can also, I don't know if I'll get 3 bonuses if I can get on the appropriations committee as well and see how I can negotiate that. But increasing money for transportation is going to be important to me. Taxing skill games, I understand why that happened. I do hesitate to tax things that are a vice for people to fund something that is positive. So I'd like to see positive returns on taxes for healthy environments and communities. So when we talk about how to increase transportation money, I don't know that having that money, depending on that money to come from skill games or from legalization of anything will be the answer to it. There are little pieces that aids in, but it's not the answer to funding anything. So with transportation, I'd like to see on the appropriations committee where we are budgeting money and how we can filter more into transportation. If I could just add, if I have more time. It's expensive when you get out of Lancaster City. We pay a lot for people who own a car, have car insurance, have kids with cars or car insurance. We pay as much in transportation costs as we do in housing. So finding ways to reduce transportation costs for families will increase an entire family budget. That's one of my goals.
Have you ever ridden on the bus?
Okay, we'll move on to our next question here. So we're going to talk about education for a few minutes and how that's funded. So last year, a Commonwealth Court judge found Pennsylvania's school funding system unconstitutional and ordered the General Assembly to reform it. Some legislators have argued for increased funding in the annual state budget. Others have suggested school choice vouchers or lifeline scholarships. What solutions do you support to increase funding and enhance K-12 education in our state? And we'll start with you, Ms. Rivera.
So this is my 30th year teaching Spanish, Warwick High School, Spanish teacher. I'm a big public education fan. My kids have graduated from Manheim Township. I've been on the school board. Public education is my life. I believe in educating the masses, and not just minimally, but very well, because that creates a strong community. It creates strong businesses. I do hope to get on the education committee as a state rep. I don't find vouchers to be an answer to improving education for anybody. Filtering tax money into private and parochial schools is not acceptable in my view, and strengthening our public schools is the answer in my view. So the Basic Ed Funding Commission came to the conclusion that funding our education throughout Pennsylvania over the next 7 years will bring us into constitutionality, because we've got the impoverished districts who are paying high taxes for properties, and we've got more wealthy businesses that have fewer tax-exempt places. We've got to fund public education and not put into private institutions. Those who want to pay for private education have at it. Our public schools now have virtual academies. I think we can reform the cyber charter payments that school districts have to make. When we see our education money coming into the school districts, it was a great bonus we got this year from the state budget. But then we watch it go out the window on unfiltered cyber charter tuition for students at different rates for different school districts. So there's a lot of reform that needs to be done in public education to strengthen it, and I am not in favor of vouchers to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Beezer.
I do agree that we need to fully fund our public schools. I'm a product of the public schools. My family all benefited from using our public schools. And when they're strong, they help to make our community and our economy strong. Now, with the alternative options in Pennsylvania, this is one where I hear from a lot of people that utilize them, is that the competition is good because people have a diverse set of needs. So when you take that away from the people that use them, we're left with a gaping hole that sometimes our public schools aren't the best suited one to fill.
Okay, thank you. We're going to talk about public safety and homelessness here for a minute. So in May 2024, Lancaster County's point-in-time count identified almost 500 individuals who are lacking shelter. This not only impacts the health and safety of the unhoused individual, but also the rest of the community and the public spaces they occupy. How do you propose state legislative change that would address homelessness while ensuring public safety and health? I'm starting with you, Mr. Beezer.
Yeah, I've got to meet a lot of the homeless in Lancaster City this year, and some of the good people doing the work, like Dave Costarella at Hands Up Partners. The homeless need help. It's oftentimes a mental health issue, and if you can start to address that, then you can start to assimilate them back into a normal lifestyle. So you kind of have to start with fixing the base of their problem, what led them there in the first place. Homeless people don't choose to be homeless. They just have some problems that they need help with. So I think if we could address the mental health issue with the homeless population, then we can begin to reassimilate them back into society, providing them jobs and housing, and then we would end up with less people on the streets.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rivera.
So I'm a public educator, and I'm an educator of students who are homeless. When we see students and families, when our school districts are clued in on these problems, we have social workers. What we need also in our communities to connect our homeless folks to housing is to have our schools, of course, better funded so that we can have the social workers needed, so that we can have the community safety nets for the kids who are experiencing homelessness. As soon as we have a homeless student, wherever they find shelter, the school district then has to pay for the transportation to bring them from whatever shelter outside the district to the community. So of course, having enough shelters and safety nets is key, but first of all and foremost is having the supports in place so that homelessness doesn't happen in the first place. We as a community can do a lot to enrich and encourage our families to get education, job training, workforce training, things that are needed to support a family and to support oneself. I don't know that there's a normal for anybody. I don't know what it means to get to normal life. Everybody's normal can be different, and the way one family operates their budget and another family can be quite different. When it comes to homelessness, it can be through crisis, it can be through healthcare issues, it can be through sudden job loss. A lot of things cause homelessness. So when we have in our community the treasure chest that's there to help our families address those crises, we can do better in that realm. The Prince Street Hub, the Otterbein, places that are shelters are needed, and I'm so grateful for all the people that I read about that are opening shelters and staffing places. We've got one opening for the next 12 weeks. And as it gets colder outside, I would hope that we as individuals would also take it upon ourselves to help out where we can. I know I've asked the questions
up on that one. You guys are doing very good though. We are efficiently getting through questions this morning. We're gonna spend some time on business climate and taxes here in the Commonwealth and just economic development in general. So earlier this year, Wallet Hub released a report that found Pennsylvania to be the eighth worst state to start a new business in. And Pennsylvania was ranked 44th in overall business environment when looking at criteria like business costs, access to resources, and startups per capita. What would you change or invest in to make Pennsylvania more business friendly? And we'll start with you, Ms. Rivera.
Yes, well, I think I addressed a few of those things earlier. Definitely having expedited I'm losing the word. When you apply for businesses, your business proposal, having that expedited, your permit to open a business is definitely something that we have to do. Access to resources. We've got the Lancaster Chamber. We have our career center that's on Manheim Pike. We've got workforce development around here. We've got to be able to connect our employees to businesses and have incentives for people to start up businesses. When you look at the daunting cost of, okay, here's my startup, but then what do I do? Having those supports for after the startup happens is what will help people take that leap into opening the business. So we need to provide securities to help the comfort of opening a business and know that there'll be supports there for after you've launched it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Beezer.
Yeah, for those of us that operate businesses in Lancaster, one thing many people agree on is the biggest burden is oftentimes the ground rent that you pay on your physical location. So one thing that we could do is make it more affordable to start a business by helping for an environment that makes it cheaper for people to pay rent. Also, keeping more money in the pockets of the citizens rather than taxing them to death. The citizens are the customer base of the businesses. So when the government is spending $50 billion a year at the state level, it's keeping the money out of the consumers' pockets, and we're better off keeping that money in the people's pockets so that they can choose what they want to do with it, like support their favorite local businesses.
Great, thank you. Okay, audience, I'm going to ask you to start to send your questions into the center. Tom on my team is going to come and collect those questions then. All right, and now we're going to do a question on property taxes. So Governor Shapiro's state budget proposal last year came in at $48.3 billion, which would have been a 7% increase from the current spending that was in place. Obviously, as they negotiate budget, those numbers shift and change. But one of the proposals in there was to raise additional revenue, proposing a tax on legalized marijuana. Opponents of the plan think this won't be enough and a property tax increase is inevitable. How do you feel the Commonwealth should drive revenues to manage budgetary needs, and how do you think the Commonwealth should attack, or maybe that's not the right word, should approach, thank you, I heard it over there, it wasn't in my head, approach property taxes? And we're starting it with you, Mr. Beezer.
Okay, so like I said, people in Lancaster City, they're burdened with the highest property taxes in the county. One thing you mentioned, that Pennsylvania's lagging behind the rest of the country, would be legalizing marijuana. Like I said, with a $5 billion industry already existing, something that could grow to $10 billion, that would generate some money to offset the high burden of property taxes. But also in talking to people when we knock doors and asking what their ideas is, I've heard an interesting one from a couple people that Pennsylvania is the only state that doesn't charge a severance tax on natural gas extractors. And you have states like Texas that are able to avoid state income tax altogether. And in Alaska, people are even sent a check every year from their government to the tune of $2,000 a year. So looking to work across the aisle, I think that's an interesting avenue to explore here in Pennsylvania.
And Ms. Rivera?
Yes, so as I said before, finding ways to increase revenue is very important without relying heavily on vices. So taxing legalized marijuana would be, of course, something that I would be in favor of. But we want to be sure that we're diversifying our tax base enough, and I think Lancaster City's home rule approach does address that topic of not overtaxing property owners and businesses and spreading it out over other things. As a Manheim Township School Board president, the phone call I get from people is, why are you raising our taxes again? And it's because it's only on properties. And so diversifying the way we can tax would help to fund what we need to fund. And property taxes just won't be enough. No one thing will be enough. That's why collaborating and finding avenues to increase taxes through things like legalized marijuana. When I talk about legalized marijuana with police force, I hear that district justices are not so in favor of it, and that the police officers who have to enforce it, of course we don't want further people intoxicated and under the influence while driving. So there's always a health and safety factor to come into play. There is no simple answer. So making sure that what we're putting a tax on coordinates with public health and safety is a balance we have to strike. So whatever we're planning to increase taxes on, we've got to look at all sides to see what else needs to happen in order for this to work soundly for our constituents. I am in favor, of course, of strengthening our economy, but I'm also responsible for the health and safety of the constituents of House District 96.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move into questions that you all submitted. I have like 5 papers and lots of note cards going up here. So what policy proposals would you support to address energy prices and reliability? And we'll start with you, Ms. Rivera.
Could you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
What policy proposals would you support to address energy prices and reliability?
So as a school district in Manheim Township, we have seen what's been coming through with solar energy, and there are lots of proposals out there to help schools go greener. Learning about those things at a school district basis helps them to spread out to the community. Of course, education is important for that. I do support what I've seen so far about Lancaster County is in Mount Joy there is a dairy farm that uses an anaerobic digester to produce electricity for local neighborhoods. So people being able to produce electricity and having it come from inward rather than outside sources would be beneficial. I would certainly support policies that help to do that. As far as energy prices that have to do with gasoline and with oil and those things, we've got to find ways to vary how people use energy. We've got transportation that's going hybrid and full electric and back to gas, and people have their preferences, but having the variety will help people to negotiate what they want to use, how they want to stabilize their own family's energy spending. But of course, on an HD 96 basis, I want to see us saving money in energy so that we can put forth more of our budgets into education and our workforce.
Great, thank you, Mr. Beezer.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, it was. What policy proposals would you support to address energy prices and reliability?
So Pennsylvania is a natural gas powerhouse, and I do support us utilizing something that Pennsylvania has in abundance. And as I mentioned before, a good idea I hear from people across the aisle would be to join most other states that enact a severance tax on it so that Pennsylvania is able to make sure that we pay our way through utilizing our natural gas resources. So if we were able to ramp that industry up while also collecting an appropriate amount of tax on it, I think that would end up kind of benefiting everybody in Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you. Do you feel that Lancaster County elections are safe and secure? And we'll start with you, Mr. Beezer.
Yes, absolutely. Josh Parsons does a great job down at Lancaster County as our commissioner. Ray D'Agostino as the head of the Board of Elections. They both say regularly that our elections are safe and secure. as everybody's probably seen in the news recently, they were able to stop 2,500 fraudulent voter registrations from entering the system, which I believe is proof that they are safe and secure. Had they not caught them, then that would be evidence maybe that they aren't. But that they are finding these types of attempts, I think, is further proof that they're doing their job, and everybody can be sure that the elections are safe and secure here.
Ms. Rivera?
Yes, since we're naming commissioners, I'll give my shout out to Alice Yoder. I do tend to follow her lead on what's going on and on the pulse of the commissioners board. And she too has said that they're safe and secure and has talked about what is going on to protect our elections and the ballot mail-in voting registration system. So yes, I too agree with that. One thing I would like to see though is more access. We don't have enough access for our voters in this county, especially when the drop boxes were taken away. Having those be public and available for people to vote, which was safe also, but then taken away, I think that needs to be re-implemented.
Okay. I have lots that are in a theme here, so I'm gonna try to pull this together into a question. You both talked about the need of affordable housing, but most of the housing that's under construction is market rate or luxury here right now. So what do you feel is the role of the state legislature to find more affordable housing that requires subsidy? And I think this person was kind of getting at the same thing. There's a relationship between workforce housing and transportation. And so how do you bring together the increasing need for transportation to the suburbs where jobs are located? How do you kind of make these two concepts work? So we're building market rate housing and it's not necessarily near where people's jobs are. So philosophy and approach to how do we get to affordable housing and how do we ensure that that's connected to the jobs that people are in? And we're starting with you, Ms. Rivera, 2 minutes.
So when it comes to getting people connected to housing, yes, a lot of the housing we see going up is what is one person's affordable is not another person's affordable. I've been endorsed by the PA Realtors Association and spoken with them at length about what can be done to help developers, as well as the architects that I met with a few weeks ago, what can be done to help to incentivize people to develop low-income housing. And it comes down to timeliness. If a developer wants to do it, and it's got to happen in a timely fashion. Zoning, things that are currently zoned for multi-purpose, multi-use, when zoning and commission plans align with what the community needs, that's helpful as well. So having our commissioners and city council agree on zoning that is appropriate for building dense housing and affordable housing is going to be important. So working with private developers to provide the incentives to bring something into play that is going to be affordable for a family and not a negative for the developer is going to be important.
Okay, Mr. Beezer.
Yeah, so as far as housing goes, it's certainly a market dynamic here where Lancaster is a great place to live, so people want to live here. So one way we can get to affordable housing without subsidizing it is just building it in excess. If you follow the Texas market where everybody wanted to move to Austin over the pandemic, they built a ton of housing, and so much so where prices started to drop. So I don't think it's always the government's job to say, hey, we're going to be the ones that determines what affordable housing is. If you build housing to the point where you meet demand, eventually the prices start to come in as well. And I think that's probably the best way to reach an affordable housing market is to have plenty of supply.
Okay, thank you. What is your position on home rule in Lancaster City and why? So we'll start with you, Mr. Beezer.
So I am a firm no on home rule, even though I don't live in Lancaster City, so the question won't be on my ballot. Talking with constituents in the city, they have plenty of concerns. One of them being they don't feel like all quadrants of the city are equally represented. So the Home Rule Commission had an opportunity to go with districts where all 4 quadrants would have got representation, and they passed on that. And from most people I hear in those neighborhoods, that's their biggest concern. That Home Rule will pass, they will raise people's income taxes, and then they will turn around and still raise their property tax as well, while people on the south side of Lancaster don't end up getting any representation. Meanwhile, you drive down Manheim Township 501 and you see people there saying to vote yes on home rule, And you really have to ask yourself, why would Manheim Township people have yard signs telling their renters in Lancaster City to vote yes on raising their property taxes?
Okay, Ms. Rivera.
As I've stated, I am in favor of home rule. I'm in favor of a diversified way to tax rather than just property taxes. Since 2016, as a school board member, all I've heard from residents is, why are the property taxes continuously increasing? And that's a business thing as well. So diversifying is definitely an important thing. When we talk about about attaching representation to the home rule in the quadrants, representation in each of the quadrants, those are two separate topics. And so getting the topic of home rule passed is what is on the ballot, and other topics get dealt with separately. So I would like to see home rule pass. I know that it'll help property owners to know that, oh, my property tax won't go up so much because there's a spreading out a percentage, an equity in taxing that's among the entire community and not just homeowners.
Thank you. Okay, are you aware of the train station area plan, which is a partnership effort including Manheim Township and the city? And what role would you see yourself playing in assisting in its implementation? So we'll start with you, Ms. Rivera.
Yes, I'm aware of the train station plans that are happening, and it's great to see the workforce development building there now, and there's housing along that line of public transportation. We're on the right track to bring families and bring more business to this area. That was an area that was desolate, that was waiting to be built, and I'm glad that it's being put to good use. It is certainly building our tax base in the county, and it is in Manheim Township, on the border of the city. So watching the city and Manheim Township partner in creating this gateway into both regions, I think they're doing a great job doing that, and of course I will facilitate whatever collaboration I can as a House representative.
Great. Mr. Beezer.
Yes, I'm very familiar with it. I've spent most every day of the last 6 years looking at the train station from my business, and I talk a lot with the local businesses in the area, and they have a lot of concerns about the way that they want to develop it. Now, there's already plans to build up additional housing over by the stockyards there, and I do think it is an area where people want to live because they have easy access to transportation, and it would be good to see it developed. It just needs to be done in a way that includes the local people's input. So some of the meetings that we attended, we kind of had to find out on our own because they weren't reaching out to the local businesses and saying, come put your input in here.
Okay. We have a question related to schools and parents here. Would you support a bill that required public school officials to notify parents should their children be experiencing gender dysphoria and confiding in said officials about their condition? And we're starting with you, Mr. Beezer.
Yes, I would. And that's an issue I hear a lot of people have concern with, that they feel like parents' rights are often kind of stripped away in this process and that the state intervenes. And I think that this is a very important place where parents should have the most input and not the state.
Okay, and Ms. Rivera.
When you talk about a policy and a law, there's a difference between laws and guidelines. I find that in school board policy as well. Something you put into policy requires everyone to do the exact same thing. Something where there's a guideline requires flexibility. And so kids are different, everybody's situation is different. A student who has a violent home life versus a student who has a supportive home life, all of those factors come into play when deciding how to approach a family, and we have social workers that do those things in school districts. So I cannot support making a policy that would be all-encompassing, that is a one-size-fits-all, because it doesn't fit all kids.
Okay. Are there any other questions that want to be submitted? Because we're coming down to the end here. Okay. For both candidates, please describe your experience interacting with voters while campaigning. What have voters told you has impacted them the most? Wait, what have voters told you that has impacted you the most? So describe your experience interacting with voters while campaigning, and what have they told you has what that they have told you has impacted you the most? We'll start with you, Ms. Rivera.
So the first few things that come to mind as I canvass interacting with voters is something I've been doing since 2015 as a first-time candidate running for school board. What I enjoy about interacting with voters, of course, is talking and learning. I am a learner. I'm an educator and a learner. So learning what is on people's minds is first and foremost. And a lot of those conversations have to do with the price of life. How much can we afford? How much more can things increase when wages have not increased? When our hours are cut, when the work is not meeting, the wages are not meeting the cost of living. I love to interact with my voters in Spanish. I am bilingual, so I go out canvassing a lot in heavily Spanish-speaking neighborhoods, meeting Spanish-speaking voters. I've attended a Latino caucus event and got to address an entire audience of our constituents in Spanish. So making those language connections is something that I enjoy doing very much. Another thing that I've heard from from many voters is that they've never voted before. They're registered and don't know where to vote. So showing people on votespa.com where their polling place is. I actually have a meeting set up with a couple of first-time voters who've been registered and are intimidated by the process and have never done it. So we're gonna walk together to their polling place next Tuesday. So they know where to go and they can go in and do that themselves. Because when you teach somebody something, they do it the rest of their lives. They just need that one little push, and that's what we do in education, is we help people learn to supply for the rest of their lives. So I've enjoyed very much meeting many constituents and hearing all of the issues.
Okay, and Mr. Beezer.
Yeah, so I actually hear a lot of the same things when we're out meeting people on doors. People are really concerned about the cost of living, and it's undeniable. It's kind of gotten out of hand here over the last 4 years. Another thing that I find interesting from a lot of local Democrats is they really feel like their voice isn't being heard. They feel like their local leadership has really kind of turned against them, and that's why you see a lot of houses in Lancaster City with Harris Falls signs along with Vote Beezer sign, because they know that it's nice to have somebody that puts people first rather than always letting the lobbyists be the ones that dictate your policy.
Okay. Should another virus show up similar to COVID, would you be in favor of closing businesses? And we'll start with you, Mr. Beezer.
No, not at all. I think that was a terrible way that we approached that in Pennsylvania. And it's still to this day, 4 years later, we're kind of dealing with reverberations from when the economy got jolted and we were made to kind of stay at home for about 6 months there in 2020. So no, I don't think if another coronavirus were to circulate that we should be shutting businesses down and locking people in their homes. That was a complete government overreach.
Okay. Ms. Rivera.
So health and safety, I think if we had a Lancaster County Health and Safety Commission, we would be better informed about what to do and when to do it. We live and learn. That's the goal in life. And so when the first pandemic happened, well, not the first, but when this pandemic happened, we've learned a lot of lessons from it. Closing businesses, I think we've learned how we can keep businesses open and still function under a crisis. And I think the next time, hopefully we don't have it, but the next time we'd be able to reduce the amount of time that we need to get ourselves together and have a plan, because hopefully we'll have a county health board by then.
Okay, thank you. I think we got to all of them, guys. So we did great this morning. Thank you for your questions, and thanks for just engaging in this and being a part of this. We're now going to move into a 1-minute closing statement, so this is going to be quick, and then we will wrap it up from there. So I'm going to turn it over first to Ms. Rivera for her closing statement.
I just want to say that I am eager to represent you in House District 96. This was my plan for 2026 moving forward. I'm going to make it work now. My skill set from 30 years of public education, school board leadership, IU13 board leadership, having 5 children, one who's adopted, who was from Mexico, who was a student of mine in my class. My family consists of LGBTQ, non-LGBTQ, phenomenal people in my life, and friends and colleagues that I've come across all throughout life. So all of these experiences have led to me wanting to advocate on the next level, and I do look forward to serving you as your next state representative.
Thank you. And Mr. Beezer.
Thank you all for your time and attention today. As I conclude, I want to reiterate my commitment to serving the people of the 96th District with integrity and dedication. Together, we can strengthen our local economy by supporting our family farms and small businesses, ensuring they have the resources they need to thrive. We can invest in our education system, providing every child with the opportunity to succeed and become a future leader. And we can foster an engaged community where your voices are heard and valued. I'm passionate about our district and believe that with your support, we can create a brighter future for all of us. I ask for your vote and your trust as we turn the page on the Mike Sterling era. Let's work hand in hand to build a prosperous, thriving, and vibrant 96th district. Thank you once again for this opportunity, and I look forward to serving in Harrisburg.
Great. Please give our candidates a round of applause. Thank you both for your participation this morning. We do really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you for participating in the forum. We will follow up with a few items. We have an elections guide. It is a nonpartisan guide and really is a tool for you to use and share with others who may be looking for information. So we will send that out via email. We will also upload the recording of today, so we can send that out to you via email as soon as we have that as well. Thank you all for participating. Happy Halloween, and make sure to get out the vote on November 5th. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Good job.
Thank you.